Hey everyone, just a quick warning. This episode does have descriptions of violence and may not be appropriate for kids.
So when I got back to Miami, the first thing that I did when I hit home, when I got to the airport and I had a buddy pick me up, I didn't go over to see friends or family or I went and got a pistol because I was really irate over several issues. And one is this, that when you go to prison, everybody forgets you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Let me turn it off.
Last episode, Jack Murphy had just been released from Rikers Island, where he had served time for robbing the Museum of Natural History of a priceless gem collection. After his release, he had gone back to Miami. So you get a pistol.
So I got a pistol, and I was mad because all your buddies, all the bartenders, all the players, nobody sends you a note. Nobody sends you a couple bucks for some canteen supplies or anything. And then when I got back, that same day I'd go to places, I'd go to bars that I hung out, and the guy said, "Hey man, where you been? Haven't seen you in a while." "Where have I been? I've been on the front page in the 6 o'clock news, jerk." I said, "Well, yeah, where were you? Where were you when I needed a couple dollars for cigarettes or whatever?"
Jack came out of Rikers Island mad. And while he made a go at the straight life for a bit, it didn't take long for him to fall back into old habits.
It was in the middle of the day, right across the street from the Fontainebleau Hotel, the famous old Miami hotel, and then there's a waterway with the yachts in it, and then these millionaire row homes.
It was January 28th, 1968, and Jack was back on the job. He says he and 3 other men were about to rob wealthy Miami Beach socialite Olive Wofford. A widow, she lived alone. Jack and his pals, Salvatore Sonny Gretsch, Bobby Greenwood, and Paul Gagnon, had cased the place a bit and assumed it would be a cakewalk. That turned out to be a very, very bad assumption.
And I'm out there, and I end up in a gunfight with the police.
My name is Nate Scott. I'm a reporter and editor with For the Win and USA Today Sports. This is The Sneak. Jack says he was meant to be the getaway driver in this heist.
So I pull in this long driveway down to this mansion, and garage is over here. I park there, and they go in this big mansion here, and the water's on the other side, this big lagoon with yachts in it. And they've gone inside, and I look at the garage door, and there's a decal on there that says ADT, silent alarm. The place is bugged.
Inside the Wofford home, there was a button embedded in the floor that was linked to the silent alarm. All Olive Wofford had to do was step on it. According to Jack, she did.
About that time, the phone went off. Phone goes off one time, is all. It goes on and off one time. And then about 10 seconds later, it comes on again. I said, "Oh, there it is." So I look down this long driveway. Here they come. Here come the police. So I go inside, and I said, "Fire in the hole."
The plan had gone to hell, and it was about to get much worse. Jack says he got inside just before the police came in the front door. He was trapped in a locked room, so using his .45, he shot out a glass door and ran through it, cutting himself badly in the process.
The cops are coming in the door over here, and I go through the window. And I'll cut up here and down here and here.
Jack was bleeding from his face and neck, but he kept moving. He and the other 3 thieves took off out the back door, then scattered. It was chaotic. And then the shooting started.
Here they come around. They go, "Stop bullshitting." They start shooting. Bam, I start shooting back. And I've got them down behind the trees, and my Sonny falls in the water.
I don't know what Jack told you about the score, what he remembered or what I remembered.
This is the Wofford case?
The Wofford robbery, yeah.
That's the voice of Salvatore Sonny Gretsch, one of Jack's accomplices in the Wofford case. Sonny lives in Naples, Florida now, where he works as a real estate agent. He told us he fell in the water.
I did. I ran right off the seawall. I mean, the cops were shooting at us from the opposite direction. He ran out the plate glass. He ran right through the window. He never opened the door.
While Sonny climbed out of the water, Jack kept shooting. With the police taking cover, eventually they were both able to make a run for it.
And I run around, and there's an empty lot, and then another home. And I run around that home, and I take this safari jacket off, and I've got a nice blue alpaca on underneath it. I go around this house, and I've taken this jacket off, threw it in a doghouse, and I threw the gun up on the roof.
Out of bullets, Jack surrendered to the cops. then tried to say it hadn't been him firing at them. The man shooting at them wasn't wearing a blue alpaca coat after all. But with his face covered in blood, it wasn't a very convincing argument.
And I go out, and meanwhile, there's cops out there, there's people out there, they've heard the fight, the guns, they've heard the sirens, the helicopters up there. It's over.
A year after he'd been released from Rikers Island, Jack Murphy was back in police custody. That wasn't his first run-in with the law that year, however. When Jack was arrested, bleeding in that blue alpaca coat, he was already very much on the police's radar. He was a suspect in the murder of 2 women who'd been discovered shot, stabbed, and bludgeoned, weighted down with wire and concrete blocks in the waters of Whiskey Creek. This spring, I called up another accomplice in the Wofford robbery, Bobby Greenwood, to ask about this. You might also remember him as Bobby G. He was one of the guys who was on the boat for Jack's very first score in Biscayne Bay.
Hello.
Hi, Bobby. How are you?
Well, I'm still walking.
Bobby Greenwood lives in Florida with his wife, Bunny, who you'll get to know better later in the podcast. He's also doing prison ministry work like Jack. During a long conversation, I asked him about the Wofford robbery. He'd been one of the guys inside the Wofford house, he says. But unlike Jack's version of the story, he says Jack was inside with him, not waiting out in the car.
I think, I'm going, that's a long way back, but that's the way it sounds to me here, because Paul Gagnon went out the front door, and me and Murphy went out the back door. And that's when he went through the glass, and I told him, I said, this one's open.
Bobby's got a similar chutzpah to Jack, and you can tell he delights in telling these stories, too.
Well, they arrested me, and when they arrested me, I was sitting under a tree, and I told them I was meditating. I don't know if they went for it. I don't think they went for it because I had a reputation at that time.
He also told me he never served time for the Wofford case, unlike Jack and Sonny.
I beat that case.
You did?
Yes, I did.
Bobby says they were all given the chance to have the case tried outside of Dade County.
And I immediately took it because it went up north to a judge that I knew.
Oh.
So, end of story. I didn't even go to trial.
Wow.
And they stayed in Dade, where we were like, kind of hot down there for us.
Yeah. Well, Jack was a person of interest in Whiskey Creek at the time already.
Oh yeah.
Both Bobby Greenwood and Sonny Gretsch confirmed to me that at the time of the Wofford robbery, they were well aware of the allegations made against Jack for his role in the murders at Whiskey Creek. That didn't make you hesitate with pulling the Wofford job, knowing that Jack was a suspect in this other double murder case?
Of course not. Well, I knew Jack from the 50s.
And so he was just someone you trusted?
The late 50s.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you ever talk with Jack about Whiskey Creek?
No, I never want to know.
You're not the first person to tell me that, Bobby.
Yeah, well, that's the truth. I don't want to know nothing about no murder.
Jack's friends weren't going to talk to us about that part of Jack's life. To find out, we'd have to head to see the man himself. We're in Crystal River, Florida, which is a small town about an hour north of Tampa. This is where Jack Murphy lives now. Yes, he's out of prison, and again, we'll get into all of that. It's early December 2019, and on our first night in town, we stumble upon the Crystal River Christmas Parade. I'm here with my co-producer, Anthony Pacillo. We had flown down to Crystal River with the hopes of talking to Jack, but in the weeks leading up to our trip, he'd been hesitant and non-committal on the phone. He said we'd talk, sure, but wouldn't commit to any date or time. So, fingers crossed, we flew down there, and figured while we waited for Jack, we'd see the sights. The Crystal River Christmas Parade has the semi-surreal feel of any holiday party in the South. People wear Santa costumes and winter hats, but it's probably 65 degrees out. The entire town of Crystal River appears to be out for this. They've been lining up lawn chairs along the main highway strip all day, and now they sit there, a community, and watch as the town rolls slowly by. The parade has ATVs, fire trucks, old-timey cars, and, for some reason, more Jeeps than I've ever seen in my life. Dozens of Jeeps, most of them decorated in Christmas lights.
The bar's getting lower for
Yeah,
entry into the event.
we're at the Jeep section. It's really just anyone, but you guys a Jeep. Oh, wow, okay. Some Jeeps even have signs attached with messages for the season. No matter what your Santa looks like, keep Christ and Christmas. I'm not even sure what the first part of that has to do with the second part, but all right. At this moment, my cell phone rings. Jack's calling me.
Yeah.
Jack. Not much. I'm here at the Crystal River Christmas Parade. Yep. Really, we just wanted to let you know that we were here, and I'm sure you might be busy with your son tomorrow, but we'll be around, so perfect. Thank you so much, Jack. All right, bye. Said hi. He's got friends in town. His son gets in tomorrow late. He doesn't know if he'll be able to see us tomorrow, but he'll touch base in the morning. I didn't tell Anthony this, but I'm a bit nervous here. Jack hadn't ducked us exactly, but he still wasn't committing to a time to see us. We'd flown a long way. It was entirely possible Jack would spend the entire week ducking our calls. Still, what can we do at this point? So we sit and watch the parade. That girl is on stilts. Holy hell.
Is that a grown-up or is that a child?
I cannot tell. That is the most impressive stilt walker I've ever seen in my life, though. After an hour or so at the parade, Anthony and I decide to get something to eat. Across the main drag from where we're standing, there's a roadhouse called Cody's. We head in there. Hey, 2 of us for dinner, please. Awesome. Cody's is a steakhouse of the Applebee's varietal. It's crowded and lively. We've sat down for about 30 seconds when I get a text message. Oh, Jack Murphy's coming to meet us right now.
Right now?
Nate, I'm heading downtown. Give me a buzz and I'll come and meet you guys. So we would be getting Jack after all, and right away. This wouldn't be the last time that Jack switched the plan on us. A few minutes later, he walks in.
Having a hell of a parade up there.
They are.
Jack is taller than I expect, maybe 6'2", and still fit at 82 years old. He comes in smiling, eager to shake my hand. His white hair is pushed to the side. He's wearing a slightly oversized Hawaiian shirt. He slides into the booth. It's wild. Thank you.
I know people.
This will not be the last time Jack tells us about knowing people, which we'll get into. In the meantime, Jack immediately takes over the meal. He starts telling stories about everything. About the town of Crystal River, about famous people he's met. He razzes the waitress, and it's unclear if he knows her or just is one of those people who likes to razz waitresses.
Can I get you something to drink?
Yeah, what's the highlight in your day so far?
My 9-month-old kid.
Hey, great. Good for you. Good for
Okay.
you. I like a sweet tea.
Okay.
We order steaks, and Jack holds court for hours. He tells stories about his work in prison and his work with churches. Finally, we wrap up our meal. It's late, and after a day of flying in a Christmas parade, Anthony and I are spent. But Jack isn't ready to go to bed yet. He asks if he can drive us home. It is a mile back, and we're tired. So we get in his car, an older Mercedes SUV. Jack pulls out of the parking lot and turns away from our hotel. And he floors it. Jack is driving maybe 60 miles per hour on the empty streets of Crystal River. The parade is cleared out. The town is dark and quiet. As he drives, he narrates little facts about the town.
This light right here is the road that goes all the way across the state to Daytona Beach.
We're driving in the opposite direction of our hotel, but Anthony and I don't say anything.
And every morning for the last 15 years, I've met at a place here called Oysters, and a restaurant, and right there for this prayer group of guys, and it's real important for all of us.
Jack tells stories, and other than the fact that we're speeding away from our hotel and unsure about exactly where we're going, it's not unpleasant. Jack seems proud of his little town, eager to show it off. For a moment, I'm reminded of driving around with my late grandpa, a little uneasy at the prospect of his driving, but enjoying stories from a guy with a lot of them. And this is what Jack can do. He's so charming that you can forget for a moment. Forget what he was convicted of doing. But then, at other moments, he'll remind you. Jack kept driving. Eventually, he went down a dark street to a different hotel, which was right near the water. He drove into the parking lot, but then he kept driving, out of the parking lot, onto a grassy expanse next to the hotel that went out to the river. We were off-roading in a 25-year-old Mercedes-Benz, heading toward the intercoastal waterway that cuts through Crystal River. Jack turned on the music.
Yeah, that's the band in there, yeah.
Jack kept driving, and then at the water's edge, he parked and turned the music down. We were alone out there, in the dark, overlooking the water. We sat in silence. Finally, he threw the car in reverse, turned the car around, and drove us back to the hotel. To this day, I don't really know what to make of that trip. But as Jack was soon to show us, he's not an easy man to get a read on. It's tempting to divide Jack's life into two chapters, before the Star of India heist and after. Before, he was a champion surfer, acrobat diver, tennis star, and darling of the Miami Beach scene. After, he would become a convicted murderer. Going in, I'll admit that I assumed that the heist, and perhaps Jack's time in Rikers Island, were what changed him. But during our sit-down interview that week, Jack told us some things. Things that made me question everything. They made me wonder if perhaps he'd always been capable of doing what he'd been convicted of doing. They made me wonder if Jack Murphy was someone I could believe about anything at all. They came up when he was telling us about the early days in Miami.
Miami is where Al Capone died there. And Al Capone and underworld characters, they come down here and they retire down there. And I happen to know a bunch of those guys. And because I'd been working, when I'm working as a cabana boy, I'm the cabana boy for Jimmy Hoffa and for the Anastasia Brothers. Tony and Alfred Anastasia were the head of Murder Incorporated for the mob. If somebody needed to be killed in somewhere, well, these are the guys they had to go through. Well, I was their cabana boy. They want some more whiskey, some more women, whatever, and I keep everybody away from them. And so Miami was saturated with people with underworld connections. Well, once I started in this new career thing, I'd get calls, say, listen, we have a situation in Boston that needs to be attended. Well, I've got a handful of Irish buddies of mine. We don't look Italian. We can get into the neighborhood, and it just become a fascinating journey, But that's what I talk about now. I don't ever talk this far into that particular life. But in Boston, we had 26 guys killed in 3 years up there in an Irish war. I mean, these aren't kids standing on street corners. These are bad guys and dangerous, bad. But you get to where it becomes like a movie that's going on, an action-packed movie, except people are really dying. It's a different, and then it gets in your blood, and it's one of the reasons that guys come back from military.
And sorry, the Boston thing. How long were you there in Boston?
I was in and out.
You were coming in and out.
Yeah.
And was this as muscle, or were you doing boosting jobs, or what were you sent up there for?
I was sent up there to we're not going to talk about that.
After our interview, we looked it up, and the records show there was definitely blood spilled between the McLeans and the McLaughlins in Boston in the 60s and 70s. A lot of blood. Some reports claim over 60 deaths in total between 1961 and 1975. And there were more than a few high-profile names involved, names you may even be familiar with. Buddy McLean, for one, was the original boss of the Winter Hill Gang. The Winter Hill Gang would eventually be taken over by infamous Boston gangster Whitey Bulger.
And I was captured in some of that stuff because a whole bunch of my friends were there. Because when they would come to Miami, we would party them. We would take care of them. And then if I was traveling, they would call me and they said, listen, we got some situation up here in Scranton or someplace. And they would give you some scores. And when you're in that business, it's just like what you guys are doing now. If somebody called you and said, hey, we got something for you to go do. Well, if you're a guy that can push that pistol and do it.
Sorry, just because I don't know the expression, what does push that pistol mean? I've never heard that before.
That's part of your gear. Some people work with a camera, some people work with a pistol. And you're pushing that camera, that's what you do, right? When you push that pistol, means that you're going in strong. You're going in something dangerous, something that is always illegal unless you're a policeman or something like that. But that's a world. That's a real world. And that's why you have penitentiaries. And that's why you have maximum penitentiaries. That's why you have death sentences and all. I can pick up the phone right now and make a couple calls. And if you have a problem anywhere in this country, they can solve it for you real quick.
Suddenly, Jack was speaking in the right now. And for the next few minutes, he would jump in and out of past and present tense, between Boston and Miami, out to Las Vegas, all while insinuating that he was still, perhaps, a connected guy.
Then the word goes out. You read the newspapers. Here's a big robbery or something. Well, who did that? Well, the word goes out, and pretty soon everybody knows. In that subculture, everybody knows who's doing what, and then you get a lot of respect. I go to Las Vegas right now, and they'll put me in a suite, $1,500 a night suite. I go down and have supper, and the supper will be a $700 supper, and I don't pick up a tab.
And is that because of?
Because I did a lot of favors for a lot of people that they couldn't find in the yellow pages. And so that's just part of the deal, part of the life, you know.
Like what kind of favors?
I just told you, favors you can't find in the yellow pages, okay?
Jack Murphy had just told us that he'd been sent to Boston during a time when dozens of men had been killed in a gangland war to do, well, you can connect the dots. And he now seemed to be suggesting that he was still very well connected in that world. As my mind raced to unpack the grenade he just casually rolled into our interview, I was also trying to figure out, was he trying to impress us or intimidate us? We weren't the only ones to feel this sense of confusion and unease trying to get to know Jack Murphy. You're about to hear the voice of Meryl Gordon, who interviewed Jack for Vanity Fair back in 2014.
So a lot of questions about who he really was. Obviously, since he's been out of jail and nothing bad has happened since then, he clearly has proved himself in some way to be a changed person. But, I just found him entertaining and unnerving at the same time.
There were a few moments with me where, if you listen to the tape back, it doesn't really sound like I'm being threatened, but I felt threatened, and that's it is an arresting power that he has, and it's...
I never felt threatened by Jack, but there was a tone of voice. He wanted me to understand who he was, and so I felt like there was a point when we were going out on a boat, and he was describing the Whiskey Creek murders, and he said, we went on a boat, just like you and I are going today. And it was a way of saying, he said at one point, I wasn't always the kindly grandfather that you see now. So I think it's interesting that he's willing. He could simply just be charming. And so by showing different parts of his persona, I think it makes it more compelling for the rest of us to try to understand who he is.
This is the thing with Jack. He's hard to read, and it sure feels like that's by design. He'll charm you and make you laugh, and tell you about the joys of helping prisoners find God, and share his last piece of steak at dinner. But hanging over everything, always, is a sense of dread. The dread of what Jack was convicted of doing. Let's quickly flash back to my visit to Crystal River. It was the morning after Jack drove us around, when he pulled up to the water and we sat there in silence. I woke up after a night of fitful sleep. I looked at my phone. The date was December 8th. I tried to place it, and then it hit me. Chills went down my spine. December 8th was the exact date when, 52 years earlier, the bodies of Annalee Marie Moan and Terry Frank Kent were discovered in the waters of Whiskey Creek. And next episode, Jack Murphy will tell us how they got there. The Sneak is a production of For the Win and USA Today. It is written and produced by myself, along with Anthony Pacillo. Our field recordist is Gustavo Moeller, and our music supervisor and audio engineer is Claire Morgan of Notterly. Research by Emily Lacaze. Video and image work from Emmanuel Lozano and Alyssa Williams. Our executives are Mark Hyland, Scott Stein, and Kate Gutman. Special thanks to the USA Today podcast squad, Shannon Green and Claire Thornton, and the crew at Wondery, especially our marketing wizard, Alex Carpenter. Additional thanks to the investigative team at the Naples Daily News for their help with reporting, and the amazing team at Miami-Dade College's Wolfson Archives, who provided our archival footage.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out these other videos from USA Today to stay up to date with all the latest news.